What are the best rock albums of 2023? Well, I'm going to give you my top 10, so keep on watching to find out which albums have hit the right notes in 2023. Welcome back to Rockers Beer Review. Today we're going to be doing the last of my sort of review of 2023, and this is the top 10 Rockers top 10 rock albums of 2023. There's quite an eccentric sort of list here, I think. You know, lots of different genres within the rock. We've got prog rock, we've got hard rock, we've got hair metal, we've got indie rock as well. So without further ado, let's go from 10 all the way to number 1. In 10th position is a band that I sort of a bit rediscovered a little bit this year called Big Wreck. Now, they're a US band. How can I describe them? I think they're like post-grunge. So there's a lot of, they sound a bit like Soundgarden. They also sound a little bit more different, more like some of those bands that came out after those big sort of the big grunge explosion. But they released an album this year called Pages, but it's a short album. I'd almost call it an EP really. It's only about 30 odd minutes. But they also released a couple of others, little EPs, where they released 3 EPs that made up an album, although they didn't release one album. But obviously, what with streaming and everything else, they're doing something a bit differently. So check out Pages, really good album. But there are other albums called 1, 2, and 3, I think, or they're called 7.1, 7.2, and 7.3. Check out them as well. Big Wreck, they're a great band. If you like bands like Soundgarden, Stone Temple Pilots, those sort of bands, but I'd say they're all slightly more progressive than your sort of average grunge band. And, you know, mixing grunge and progressive rock, I think it's a really good thing. So I'm putting them in my 10th position, Big Wreck. Check them out. In 9th position, what can I say? Foo Fighters. Yeah, I mean, the Foo Fighters album, Be Here We Are. I still find that a weird title, but I think it's a really good album, and in fact, it's one of their best albums. I mean, I've always known, obviously, Foo Fighters. I saw them on when they first toured in '95 on their first album at the Reading Festival. I was there then, nearly died at that festival, but that's another story. But the Foo Fighters, you know, they've been doing lots of great albums, so they've really been sort of, I suppose, you know, flying the flag for sort of rock music, keeping it going in those sort of dark days in the sort of late 90s and early 2000s. But I think this new album's good. I mean, obviously, this was the first album they released after the death of their drummer. And I think, you know, as much as there's a lot of this album that sort of, you can see there's mourning of Taylor Hawkins' demise sort of thing, but also I think there's some really great songs. They mix it up a little bit. It's not all samey. There's not all ballads. There's some rockers in there. There's some slightly more epic-y sort of songs, but I think it's definitely a really good album. I thought it's really stood out for me this year. So Foo Fighters' Be Here We Are is in 9th position. In 8th position is that's 7th. In 8th position is Winger and their 7th album. Big fan of Winger, love Winger. I was really looking forward to this album. It's good. It's not great. I think they've done better albums. I really think Karma, which was an album they released probably about 10 years ago now, was really good. The original albums, I just felt that with all the weight, I expected something a bit better, but there's still some really cracking songs on it, especially the last one. Some brilliant playing by Red Beach. So I'm putting in 8th position, Winger 7. In 7th position, nearly got it wrong, is Extreme 6. So another band decided they'd call their album the number it was, the 6th album. Really like this album. I think there's a real comeback. I don't think I'm a mega fan of Extreme. I liked, you know, the Porn and Graffiti that came out, their 2nd album. That was obviously a big album for them in the early 90s. But for me, this is a good mixture of styles. There's a certain hard rock element, that certainly their sort of hair metal sort of stuff, bringing back some brilliant guitar solos, and you know, I think Nuno has sort of made a big point of making some big guitar solos on this album. But we got ballads, we got some slightly electronic, bit of 80s stuff in there. they've done some songs that, for me, sound a bit like bands like Velvet Revolver, the Stone Temple Pilots. So I think this is really good. And it culminated in me seeing them at the end of November this year. That was a really cracking gig. I mean, considering the age of them, they're jumping around the stage as if they're in their 20s and they're actually in their 60s. Well, Nuno's, I think, in his late 50s. But Gary Sharon is in his early 60s, but was jumping around and singing just as well as he was in his 20s. So a really cracking gig that was, and a really cracking album. So in 7th position, I'm putting Extreme 6. In 6th position, I'm putting another band that not many people probably know, a band called Head with Wings. Now, they're another sort of, they're more on the progressive side, but they've got sort of, they're a little bit, they're not overly, I don't think they're not overly widdly like a lot of progressive bands can be. They're very much like a sort of progressive post-grunge sort of band as well, but I think they lean, whereas Big Wreck leans more on the grunge side, I think that they lean more on the progressive side. But some really good, brilliant vocalists, and their album called Without Intervention is cracking. Check out the song Galaxy. That's a really good song from them. That was their lead single from the album. It's a bit short, but every song, it's all killer, no filler. So definitely a great album that. So that was Head with Wings, Without Intervention. Check them out. I'm losing my count now, 10th, 9th, 8th, 7th, 6th, 5th position is Stephen Wilson's Harmony Codex. Stephen Wilson, you're never really quite sure what you're going to get with Stephen Wilson, but I think this album is almost like the best bits of all his previous solo albums, and it's a little bit, it's quite, it's a easy to get into sort of album. There are some longer progressive pieces, but it's much more cinematic than sort of overly sort of progressive, I would say. Lots of soundscapes and stuff like that, and the songs that are sort of being released are much more, I suppose, to the commercial side, much like the last sort of couple of albums. But I think it's an accessible album. It's a good album. Stephen Wilson has done better, but it's still pretty good album for this year. So I'm putting the Harmony Codex in there in 5th position. In 4th position, I'm putting Nothing But Thieves' new album. That was Dead's Club City. Yeah, I mean, these are not the sort of band that I would expect to be in my list. They're not a heavy metal band, they're not hard rock, they're not progressive rock. They are very much an indie rock, quite commercial. But they're one of those bands that I discovered over lockdown. I listened to them a lot. They're from Southend-on-Sea, stone's throw from where I'm from in Essex. They're just a great young band. They come across as a little bit like a cross between Radiohead and the Killers, but I get, the singer is a phenomenal singer, and he's probably the closest modern singer, I think, to someone like Jeff Buckley. That's higher praise than I could ever give to a band like that. But they're a really good band, and their album Dead City Club was a great release this year. Okay, in 3rd position, we've got Riverside's album ID Identity. I'm a massive fan of Riverside. They are on the progressive rock stroke progressive metal. I did a Riverside ranking albums earlier a couple of months ago. This is a really good album from them, and I like the way that they've mixed sort of some of their 80s sort of influences. There's a lot of sort of aha sounds, big synths and stuff like this on the album, but it's again very accessible. It's a very good album. I think it's definitely worthy of being in the top 3. So I'm putting the Riverside ID Identity in 3rd position. In 2nd position, one of my favourite bands that I just think are great, and I was interested to where they went, but this is Greta Van Fleet's album Starcatcher. Now, Greta Van Fleet have always been known, I suppose, also but written about as being a bit like Led Zeppelin, copycat Led Zeppelin. And yeah, I mean, the singer is a great singer, just like Robert Plant, and they are very similar. But their last album, The Battle of Gardeners Gate, I thought they were really stretching and moving away from that Led Zeppelin and bringing another sort of 70s icons really to their music. But it's a bit weird because after that I thought they would develop even further, but then they went almost like this album Starcatcher. I think it's more Led Zeppelin than the last one, but that's not a bad thing. Any band that's going to be a bit like Led Zeppelin and does it well, it fills that hole for people that like Led Zeppelin. It's a good thing, and I think Greta Van Fleet are cracking, man. They're one of my favourite bands. I really enjoyed their album Starcatcher, and it's nice why it's in number 2. And in 1st place, who could it be? Well, This is another band that sort of pretty much come from nowhere, and they're another band that have been a little bit like another band, really. It's like Greta Van Fleet are obviously, that they nod their heads to Led Zeppelin in their sort of major influence. Well, the next band, Crownlands, and their bit album Fearless, they're filling the hole that Rush left for us all those years ago. They are very much like Rush. But, where Rush was did amazing things with just 3 players, these guys do amazing things. They're just 2 of them. The singer is also the drummer. And basically the other guy, he does everything else. Guitars, keyboards, bass, all at the same time. It's amazing. But their album Fearless is cracking. It opens up with almost like a medley of the greatest 70s Rush songs. But they're more than that. They do have that big Rush influence. But let's face it, which bands really do? I mean, Dream Theater sort of have a little bit of Rush in their sound, but there's no band that really fills that gap that Rush has. And I'd almost say, if you like Rush, then you're going to love Crownlands, really, because they're the modern day Rush. They haven't got to the point where they've released a few sort of, different types of albums. Their album Fearless is very much more, I think, on the 70s, but there's a lot of the sort of early 80s Rush in there as well. So if you like anything, if you like Rush, you're just going to love them. You really are. Crownlands are definitely worth a listen if you like Rush. Yes, you might listen and go, oh, are they just ripping off that first song on that album? It's almost like you can hear echoes of lots of different songs from Rush in there, and you think, is it ripping it off? But more you listen to it, you get more out of the album, and there's more tracks on there that, again, they've got maybe more of the Led Zeppelin as well. But let's face it, Rush were their first album was very much influenced by Led Zeppelin. So if you like that sort of thing, Rush, Led Zeppelin, 70s, 80s, you're going to like this band, Crownlands. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to what they do next, because this is only their real sort of, I think this is their second album, but their first album was quite different. But this is, they've really created an identity for themselves, and I think this is a really good album. So that's why it's my number 1 album in 2023. So let me know what you think. What's your top 10 albums, or what's your top 3 albums of 2023? Which ones have I missed? I haven't really listened to, I know there were one release that came out this year was the Peter Gabriel. I haven't really listened to that fully, so I'll probably get into that a bit more in 2024. But I think these are really some really great albums, and I'm looking forward to 2024. Which is going to be the album that blows our socks off in 2024? I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you think. Which album are you looking forward to that you think is going to come out next year? Let me know in the comments. And until the next one, this is the end of our series of 3 look backs of 2023. So I hope you liked it. Please give it a thumbs up if you do. Please subscribe if you're not a subscriber. And as I say, let me know what your top 3 2023 albums are. And until the next one, you know what we're going to do. Keep on rocking.